Okay, so the next topic up is adding a person to AASHTOWare project. We have Jenny, Jessica, and Nicole for this one. All right, ladies, over to you.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen, if you don't mind. Let's see. Okay, so can you see this? So yeah. We in OCIC, Jessica and I both add persons and users into AASHTOWare. Our main purpose of adding a person is to get them to be a user. So Charlie mentioned earlier that there's thousands of people in the system, and a lot of these people are never ever going to actually touch AASHTOWare. They're employers or what employees, they're out on our contracts. So the one thing that we have for our construction users is we have a new user request, and it's also a change user request. And we do require that the request for new users comes from either an office manager or a project or resident engineer. So on the office manager's iHub site, as well as the project engineer's site, we have a link to AASHTOWare project construction new user request. I'm just going to open this up. And to ensure that we're getting a request from a person who should be granting, we ask for who's submitting the information, what role. Is it a new user or an existing user? So if I click on the yes, it's going to ask for certain information, first name, last name, email, user ID. In my case, I'm Carl1Jen. A tech cert ID, the kind of role that needs to be granted to that person. And so there's a lot of roles in the system. This is what our office assigns to different people. We don't do any of the materials roles. If they have a device ID, and you just heard Jessica and Rachel talk about mobile inspector and mobile tester, and when you download these apps, you get a device ID. We need to know that information. We also ask which administrative office, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but basically which resident office is the person assigned to, whether or not the person should be assigned all contracts within that office, or if the office manager will assign contract-specific authority, and any other comments that we might have, and then they just click on submit. If they were to say, no, it's not a new user, then it's an existing user that we need to change, and maybe we're going to change role, change the administrative office. Maybe they've gone from one office to another. Maybe they have a tech cert ID, which we didn't have before, or if we need to remove access consultants or people who have in the MnDOT support mailbox, people added as soon as possible. So that's what we have for construction personnel to add those users, persons and users to AASHTOWare. We rely on the office managers and the project engineers just as a way to kind of control security and access to the system. So that's why we do that way. We also have some people that request read-only roles, and typically they will get all contract access. So all contracts that are administered in the system, and the people that we would give this type of access to, they can go in, they can look around, but they can't actually do anything to any of the contracts, but maybe they're looking for data. That would be finance personnel currently, audit personnel, and FHWA. So that's what I have.
Thank you, Jenny. And anything else on that topic? Jessica, Nicole?
I think Nicole has a presentation that she's going to pull up.
see Nicole might mute. There she is.
Gina, I think there's another question that came in about the digital inspector.
Yes, and Rachel's working on a reply, a detailed reply for that one.
Can you see it? Or not yet?
Not yet. Almost. You're close. Here you go. Ah, I see it. Looks good.
I'll get you guys off there. Okay. I think Jessica's first. Oops.
Yeah, so Jenny talked a lot about the rules or requesting user access in AASHTOWare. I just did want to, I guess, go over a little bit of what the construction roles we have in AASHTOWare. So based on what role you have will determine what actions and tasks you can do within the system. So these listed here are just kind of the majority of the construction roles. Like Jenny said, we do have some read-only roles as well. So there's the project engineer, construction project engineer role, chief inspector, non-chief inspector, and then we do have a consultant project engineer role. And then there's also the office manager role, and that one kind of crosses over between both construction and civil rights and labor component in AASHTOWare. So the next slide probably is a lot of what Jenny talked about. The user request form, we just require that that is filled out and sent in by the office manager or the project engineer or supervisor. They're the ones that kind of determine what roles the people in their office should have. And then you can have administrative office authority. So if you want the user to have all contracts in your resident office, or just certain contracts, which is contract specific authority, and that is assigned by the office manager. And then there is the field for the tech cert ID, and that is going to be used for uploading and setting qualifications for sampling and testing. That was talked about earlier this morning. And then the device ID, which is needed for mobile inspector and mobile tester. And then users can have more than one role. So if they're going to be the chief inspector for just one certain project and they need the chief inspector role for that, but then everything else they're just using their inspector role, they just need to switch between the different roles. That's kind of all I had on that.
Okay, and for materials, we have independent insurance and a mixed design role, system read-only, similar like the construction has a read-only, Maplewood specialty office role, that would be like your concrete, your bituminous, your grading and base, etc. on that. Then we had a lab supervisor, lead tech, and lab tech. And those are for the district offices, and there's also some people in Maplewood Lab that would also have them roles also. And then the inspectors is precast and structural metal, and that is not for construction inspectors. There is a few other ones coming in the future to be created. Right now, our basic roles that we are using in the system right now would be Maplewood specialty offices, lab supervisor, lead lab tech, and lab tech. So in the future, and role and qualifications, plant monitor, this will be added to the construction access form in the future. This will be a contract specific role and or a district role, similar to the construction that you already have, and it'd be signed by the administrative office authority. So signed by office manager, and the district role could be some offices do it. They have a plant monitor that goes around and does the plant monitoring for the whole district, or it might be specific just to that contract. Depends how the districts handle it. The tester lab would be a new field added to the construction access form, and that is for sample submittal on the construction access form. It's already on the materials access form. So current users in the system will be updated by material support and working with the districts to add the tester labs. Only new users or changing roles will be updated by the access form once this field is implemented in construction personnel. So we wouldn't ask everybody to submit a new form. We'll work to get that updated. And that would be, there's an idea of the tester labs. That would be a field that would open up. So just like the requesters for construction, we have right now the lab supervisor, independent insurance, and specialty office are the requesters. The tech cert ID, Jessica just talked about the same thing. It's uploading and setting qualifications for sampling and testing. The key thing on that is it's important. It gets your certs in there. And the other thing is if it has a leading zero, make sure you don't add that on there. And that's on all the forms now. Device ID, that is that alphanumeric, and Rachel showed you that when she did her presentation. And users can have more than one role and or one more tester lab. So here's our form. We mimic constructions to keep them the same, but ours is the materials user form. And so I will just quick do a demo of it. Whoops. Lab supervisor, a new user, or yes or no question. They have different fields. I'll just do yes. And we'll just use Jane. That is optional. Johnson. This is only for MnDOT personnel. We are in the process of creating a local access form. So that would be Johnson, Jane, excuse me, one Jane. Tech cert, so let's say you had 1034. Make sure you take that one out, or the zero, excuse me. ACI cert ID, if you have that, put that in there. 651, 651, right there. Whoops, scrolled. 651, 5453. Okay, provisional. If you happen, it is a provisional that's assigned by IA. Yes, and then you put the number in there. If it is not, no, it won't open up. So is this a role for the district or is it for Maplewood? This one I'm going to do for Maplewood. We're going to just use specialty office. If you happen to need specialty office and they need like the lab technician, that's where you can put in the comments below and add the two roles. But click on the one and then fill it, just type it in below in the comments. Here's where you add in your device ID, the alphanumeric 8-digit character. So here we're going to add multiple locations. We're going to just put Duluth and Virginia. And here's our tester labs. We'll just put in Duluth right now. Add lead tech or lab tech test. We've added another feature here. So this is next. we get a confirmation page. So if you accidentally push return in the middle, it'll actually send you to confirmation page. You can go back previous. All your information is still saved. You don't have to start over. And that happens anywhere you click in the middle and you accidentally hit return. Your information is not lost and it doesn't submit, which is a nice feature. Go back out here, submit form. Nice little thank you for you. So then we get, whoops. This is an example of a submitted form that comes to the email. This comes to the material support email and it'll be processed for further. This is one I had already created. I had saved in here for the example, but then it'll be processed for getting this user access for this person. It's a user. Now, I already mentioned that we're in the process of creating a local access form for such as city and county sampling. And for submitting, this is just an example of what we have. It's right now out to the web team to be created. Much simpler form. We will, once we get this back from the web team, we'll be sending it out with an email and information. And we can get this information sooner than later and get these persons created and into the system now. So when a sample is submitted from Hennepin County or wherever, the local city, they can, when you go to create the sample record, you can just click on their name. So we're going to be trying to be proactive on this. And we have the materials AASHTOWare website. It's in the design phase. And this is where we're going to house our forms. So it's under construction. And right now, actually, most of the materials hasn't even seen this yet, but this is what I've gotten back from the web team. You can see on the bottom, we have the materials user form. We would add the local user form right here, a link. We're going to have some videos, some how-tos, reports, some general. We mimicked to keep it the same of construction. We went on that same whole look on that. Here's our login. Here's a resource page. This is all the links to the grading and base, construction tools, lab manual, schedule of materials, approved qualified products, and then we have our contact. Here's some key contacts from materials, and then here's our email for AASHTOWare material support. Now this is still in the process. I know it was talked about putting something out there, maybe the schedule or something of where we're at on doing the reports and AASHTOWare, and maybe this would be where we'd house that too, so people could see the progress of where we are. That's a possibility. And questions?
We do have some questions that came in. That was very nice, ladies. Thank you very much. Okay, let me see here what we have. We have one question from the previous session, which we'll leave until the end of this one just to kind of answer it for everybody. And we have another comment from the other session we'll leave for everyone. Okay, so we have two questions related to this session. One from Charlie. Who will be doing the request to add people and giving roles to the materials?
So who will be doing the request? Oops.
Yes. Who will be doing the request to add people and giving roles for materials? Charlie K.
So try to add people. So are you talking local, Charlie? Locals, they would request for themselves. And they would submit
And
the
Charlie?
form themselves.
And I open it up for Charlie to talk as well, if you'd like to.
And Nicole,
There you go, Charlie.
I had asked this before you got to it in your presentation, Nicole, so I think you covered a lot of that in your presentation. So,
Okay, thank you.
And Nicole, this is Alan. I'll just jump in for a quick second here. You know, there is a distinction between users versus a person, and persons can have qualifications but won't have a role in the system from the standpoint of being, you know, a technician or something like that. That would be, well, they may, someone from Infotech can correct me, but you know, the roles are more for the users than it is for a person. There's a difference between person and user, I guess, is what I was trying to emphasize more than anything.
Correct. A person in the system is in there to be able to select them for some reason. The users are actually able to go into a system and add data or make some kind of change, unless they're a read-only person, you know, and read-only access will allow them to see data but not make any change. A person doesn't even access the system to do anything within it.
All right, thank you. We have another question from Kevin Cleathermos, AASHTOWare. From the last screenshot Nicole had, should list the specialty with each person. Kevin, I'll open it up for you to talk here. Here you go. There.
Yeah, the last one just had their name and phone number on there, Nicole. Yeah, it was John Borman was the first one, and then his phone number.
Kevin, this is Maria. Right now that list is a generic list of people who are in materials who have an idea of how AASHTOWare materials is functioning and being used, and it's from that aspect of its being the resources. So right now there's no saying that I'm concrete or John is grading and base. None of those things are pertinent to what this is used for at this point in time, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Oh, you were talking, I'm sorry, on the website when I said
Yeah.
the contacts? Those are just SMEs, and yes, it was just people out there. We're not getting specific to who's a SME is a subject matter expert for what. They're just contacts right now, period. We haven't narrowed, I mean, it isn't narrowed down to who is specific to what area.
Okay.
And that isn't even it's not, actually, there's only one other person that has seen that website so far. That was probably everybody else on here I mean, Maria hasn't even seen that. So that was a first look for everybody. So that was new. I just got it yesterday.
Thanks for getting that ready for here.
Yeah, it was
neat
nice.
to see that. I've been hearing about it. It's like, woo, you see
That was a
yay.
nice surprise, and I'm like, oh, just in time for the presentation. I'm going to kind of put it out there. So it's still a work in progress. Needs
Is
a
that
lot of
going to be on
reviewing.
iHub or the external site?
That one's going to be on the iHub.
For now, I assume, right?
For now, yes. Yep, we're building this one for just internal, so.
Good conversations there. We have a question and a comment from the last session, but does anybody else have any questions for this session before we go to those? Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, thank you. And Rachel, I'm going to bring you back up for the question from the last session. We have a question submitted. The question is, will the inspector have the ability to change the determined quantity of material that needs to be tested?
Right. So my response, I believe, was that you can do that through the main application. That's going to be available currently on the daily work report on the item posting. That is possible to do. You can modify the quantity of installed material. However, I'm not sure if that is possible through Mobile Inspector at the moment. I'm waiting to hear back from our team. I will let you know as soon as I get that answer from them. And MnDOT hasn't yet decided if they're going to expose the ability to modify that installed material quantity. That's really what drives how many records we're looking for. As you can imagine, if you're talking about sampling at a particular quantity of material, if you can modify that quantity of material, that's going to change how many samples should have been taken. So that's still an open question. And we would love your input. If that's something that you would like to be able to manage at that granular level, I think we would like to know that you're open to that and willing to do that.
I'm thinking this might be trying to figure out the login IDs here. I think it might be Andrew, A-N-D. So it's DOST1 A-N-D, the person who asked that question.
Andy Dostal.
Andy, okay. I'm figuring it out a little bit. Thank you, Jennifer.
Gina, if it's okay, this is Maria. I just wanted to add that much like AASHTOWare Construction has been using super users and in the districts to help train and do all these sorts of things, that when we'll talk more about the construction materials tomorrow, but we are looking for a few more volunteers from construction to potentially help us when we get to that point in time. So
yes, please. Also, I did hear from our team, and there's not a way to modify the actual installed quantity of material using Mobile Inspector, but you can do it through the application, the installed quantity. You can modify the represented quantity of your record.
Thank you, Rachel. We have one comment that came in from J-E, it says JEJU1JEM. Comment, I like the mobile tester. It may be used for precast inspection. Good comment.
You can thank Mike Daniels.